Make sure that you carry liability.
Sergeant, please arrest anybody who continues to talk. Okay, there's 1, 2, oh, no. Just kidding, just kidding. My goal is to make this woman here smile for this meeting. There we go. Okay, we're good. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to take up item number 4. Hold on a second. Don't we have a consent item?
Yeah.
Item 3 is a consent item. I'd like to move that item. My colleague, Mr. Cardenas, is the other member of this committee. He's not able to make it. So I'd like to move that item forward with my recommendation for support. Okay, item number 4.
For item number 4, you have a motion by Mr. Weezer to sell the property at, 5 acres of property for the purpose of open space in El Sereno community, commonly known as Elephant Hill. And you have several speakers on this item.
Oh, okay. Okay, Paul? Habib? You want to tell us why we're here?
Thank you. Paul Habib with Councilman Weezer's office. The city entered into a settlement agreement with this property a number of years ago with the intent that we would try and preserve this as open space. It's about 19 acres of land in what's commonly known as Elephant Hill in the El Sereno community of LA. And we've been working diligently with the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and the Mountains Recreation Conservation, let me get the name right, Authority, thank you, MRCA, for the last 2 years to try and find a way for them to reach in and preserve this land for the city. What we have before us is an agreement. There's been a partnership between the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and the MRCA to allow them to proceed for Prop 84 funds that would take 5 acres of contiguous property in this area and save it permanently for open space. In the motion that we did after speaking with our city departments, the CAO, the CLA, GSD, as well as the SMMC and the MRCA, we did have a technical correction that we wanted to amend our motion for the action items. Instead of the very first action item that authorizes GSD to negotiate, we want to correct it to read the following. I therefore move that the City Council declare as surplus the 5 acres of contiguous city-owned property at Elephant Hill and direct the Department of General Services to initiate the surplus property process in order to sell the property to the MRCA. Secondly, I further move that the City Council express its support for the proposed Elephant Hill Open Space Restoration and Public Access Project and MRCA's application for the State Proposition 84 Urban Greening Funding. This action, if approved, this action would preserve this as open space. It would authorize the city to enter negotiations with the MRCA. It would allow them to meet the November 17 deadline for this grant funding to potentially bring almost $2 million to purchase the property from the city, to make irrigation corrections that the city has needed to do for over 20, 30 years and hasn't had the funding to do it, to correct the water runoff from the hill into the residential homes that abut it. So we're very excited with this, and we ask for your blessing in moving this forward and preserving open space, not just for El Sereno, but for all of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a number of cards, and I recognize that this is a very controversial item, but all the cards are in support. So you could take an item where everybody agrees and make it very controversial if you talk too long. Okay, is everybody clear on that? So we're going to ask everybody to keep their comments. Can we set the clock for 1 minute? Okay, so everybody will get 1 minute. I'd like to start with Manuel Govea from the Office of Senator Carol Liu.
Good afternoon, Honorable Councilman. My name is Manuel Govea, and I am here today as the Environmental and Sustainable Programs Manager representing State Senator Carol Liu of the 21st District. I'm here today to urge you to support this proposal to partner with the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. The senator has been a strong supporter for saving Elephant Hill as a parcel of land for open space, giving the public access to environmental quality education, and just to build a community gem for outdoor space. Senator now encourages you to continue this moving forward, and just urge you to do this for the community of El Sereno.
Great.
Thank you.
Manuel, I'm sorry, that was you. I'm sorry. Ooh. What's that? Maria? Ooh, how about somebody Feldman? I can't read it. Are you a doctor?
No.
No, okay.
I was writing fast, I'm sorry. It's Sarah Feldman.
Sarah, okay.
I'm Sarah
course it's
Feldman.
Sarah.
I'm with the California State Parks Foundation, but I'm representing myself here today as a citizen of Los Angeles and a resident of Highland Park. I strongly support this motion to allow the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy to apply for state funds to improve Elephant Hill. As a neighbor of El Sereno, I know how desperately needed these improvements are for this park-starved neighborhood, and I urge you to recommend that the City Council pass this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Casey Reagan?
Go ahead.
Okay, Hugo Garcia? Casey, for the record, you're supportive of the motion?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
You have my letter.
Oh, yeah, that was your letter, huh?
Yeah.
Good letter. Okay, I'm sorry, Hugo Garcia.
Hugo Garcia, lifelong resident of El Sereno, and a former president of the LA 32 Neighborhood Council. In 2004, the Neighborhood Council took a position against a development project and for open space in the community. We had our biggest turnout that we've had ever to any community meeting in the community for the Neighborhood Council. And that was an indication to us that we should support the community. Recently, as being president of the El Sereno Organizing Committee for the last 20 years, we went out and did speak to the residents along the perimeter of Elephant Hill, and there is overwhelming support. There continues to be overwhelming support for the current motion that's before you. So we think that we ask that the committee vote in favor of the motion and to support the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Romero? One of my favorite people.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here, and I'll try to be brief. I'm here to just say that this MRC acquisition would provide public access to 5 acres of Elephant Hill. Currently, the city owns 20, but it's closed to the public. So this would allow this space to be open to the public. MRCA would manage the property, relieving the city of maintenance burden and improving the public safety of the site. We are currently going to apply with this motion. It would allow us to apply for grant funding to improve the property, which is why this motion, the deadline is Friday. That's why we're here today. If funded, the MRCA would construct 1-mile trail connecting to neighborhoods on the opposite sides of the hill. And the new trail would provide opportunities for physical activity in a pleasant and a safe and welcoming environment, which would greatly improve the public health in the neighborhood. If funded, Audubon Center and Semillas Community Schools Charter School would engage with the community in restoring 2 acres of new woodlands. And so I'm just here to say this opening this public into a natural step is the committee have worked very hard to stop the development of the plan for the site. We thank the city for working with the MRCA to save much needed open space. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Edelman?
Hello, Honorable Chair. Paul Edelman, Deputy Director of Natural Resources and Planning for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. The Elephant Hill is really an urban miracle, both for watershed purposes, ecologically, viewshed, recreation. Let's not miss this opportunity to get the people onto it and to help reimburse the city for some of its money that it put into it and so boldly acquiring it. The Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy felt that this was a key property. We're proud to have offered a grant to the MRCA to acquire the property from the city, and we urge you to go a yes vote today. Thank you.
Great. Oh, James Rojas?
Hi, I'm James Rojas. I'm here representing Latino Urban Forum. I want to thank you for your support for Elephant Hill and kind of bringing environmental justice to our community and stopping this really bad planned development. Communities like El Sereno usually don't have the kind of resources to wage or win these kind of in campaigns, but Latino Urban Forum has been really one of the leaders in kind of creating a broad-based coalition to mobilize people and resources to acquire this campaign and kind of mount a strategic campaign to kind of secure this park. And we urge the committee to finish the campaign on this high note by engaging in partnerships that will leverage the resources required to protect the land, provide public access to open space, as well as important environmental amenities to a park for a community. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, thank you for training one of my former staff members in planning as a teacher at USC. For those of you, he didn't introduce himself this way, but he's a teacher at USC in planning, and we need more people to think like you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Damon Nagami?
Good afternoon. I'll keep this short. My name is Damon Nagami. I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council. We strongly support this motion regarding Elephant Hill. For over 20 years, NRDC has worked with communities in Los Angeles to protect open space and parkland for the city's densely populated urban neighborhoods. People who live in the city need access to open space and parks and to connect with nature and to enjoy a peaceful place of respite. Now the city has a golden opportunity to protect Elephant Hill for the El Sereno community and future generations to enjoy. This project will bring immediate benefits to El Sereno. People will have better access to a magnificent outdoor space where they can get fresh air and exercise. Kids will have a green space nearby where they can hike and play outdoors. And we'll be restoring an urban ecosystem for native plants and animals, bringing a sense of ecological balance to the community. The people of El Sereno need this to happen. We urge this community to help one of the city's most park-poor neighborhoods by recommending that the full council pass this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Chapman?
Honorable Council Member, I'm Jeff Chapman, Director of the Audubon Center at Debs Park. Thank you for the opportunity to address this committee today to speak in favor of the city moving forward with a partnership with the MRCA. Audubon's been involved with Elephant Hill for over 8 years. In Northeast communities where parks are few and natural areas even fewer, Elephant Hill benefits both community members and our wild residents. Elephant Hill represents a vital biological reserve of native plants and animals.
What kind of residents?
Wild residents? You know, in El Sereno?
Okay.
So some of those residents are only found in Southern California and nowhere else in the world. Also, permanently protecting Elephant Hill will also provide important opportunities for local children and families to connect with nature and take part in community science and other activities to restore native habitat. We're looking forward to taking part in this partnership with MRCA to aid with environmental education, interpretation, and restoration, and we urge this committee to move forward this motion to the full council. Thank you.
By the way, my sister lives in El Sereno, and I agree. Stephanie Taylor?
Good afternoon. I'm here to represent the Green LA Coalition. Elephant Hill campaign was one of our first efforts as a coalition to ensure open space is preserved in areas where it's most needed. I and approximately 60 other leaders of community and environmental organizations took part in this campaign that started in 2004 and continues to this day. The Elephant Hill campaign involved a unique partnership between residents, environmental organizations, and community-based groups to secure environmental justice for the working people who live there. The city has a unique opportunity to take advantage of outside resources to make this community's open space dream a reality and to ensure a happy ending for this long, hard-fought community campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcos Aguilar?
Hello, I'm Marcos Aguilar. I'm the Executive Director of Semillas Community Schools. We represent 3 charter schools along Huntington Drive, and we see Elephant Hill every day as we educate our children from that vantage point. And we're here to support the motion of partnership with the MRCA. Our students asked us to remind you that they refer to Elephant Hill as the heavens, and that's indicative of saying that we have Tochaneque Ilhuicampa. These lands do not belong to us, they belong to the future, they belong to our ancestors, and so preserving them is the right thing to do. Our environmentally focused education, internationally focused education will be committed to continuing the support of the campaign in Elephant Hill, to restore it and to re-beautify the area that the people found so many years ago.
Cool, thank you. Anthony Manzano?
Good day, Chair. My name is Anthony Manzano, current president of LA 32 Neighborhood Council. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Neighborhood Council as we have not heard this issue yet, but I am the 4th generation living in the same home, in the same property, in a community nearby. I did submit 3 maps or packages similar like this to the committee, which does indicate reflective of the community, the Neighborhood Council. We serve 4 communities, and the maps indicate, as referenced back in 1912, and filed with the Secretary of State June 10th, 1915, that Bairdstown had actually been annexed to the city of Los Angeles, therefore creating the community of El Sereno. I'm just here to give information, and the map supplied will show that Elephant Hills is outside the community of El Sereno, but the community still wishes to seek support, and this is something that's vital to the community, to have open space, much like Ascot Hills, Ed Debs Park, Elephant Hills, and Paradise, which is in CD1. But just for point of reference, this is just outside the boundaries of the community of El Sereno, and the maps will reflect that. Thank you so much.
Teresa Villegas? Thank you for that history lesson, by the way.
Hi, Teresa Villegas. I represent Supervisor Gloria Molina on this issue. She is very supportive of this potential transaction and working in partnership with the MRCA. We are very park deficient, as you know, in this community, and we consider Elephant Hill as part of El Sereno community. As a resident, I feel it's needed, and it would be a big attribute for the trails and for some of the drainage issues that we have in the area. I would hope that you move this measure to the full council. Thank you.
Thank you. Alina from the LA Land Trust. It looks like Bogdi.
Yes.
Is it?
Book day, yes.
That's what I said. I can't believe it. That's not what it looks like. I was just kidding. Go ahead.
So again, my name is Alina Bokde. I am the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, which is a nonprofit dedicated to creating and maintaining neighborhood parks and community gardens in Los Angeles' low-income communities of color. I had the pleasure of serving on the board of the Latino Urban Forum when it played a leadership role in the grassroots campaign to stop a poorly planned development in Elephant Hill. I want to thank you, Councilmember Alarcon, and the rest of the City Council for ensuring environmental justice for El Sereno at a time by putting a stop to this project that threatened public health and safety and involved grading one of the last and largest remaining open spaces in LA to bedrock. During the campaign, I had the opportunity to hike Elephant Hill and learned firsthand of its potential for addressing the well-documented lack of park space in El Sereno. I urge this committee to support Councilmember Huizar's motion to ensure that environmental justice is served once again through the sale of this land to MRCA and the creation of a nature park with walking trails. Please support this effort to leverage the resources required to protect the land, improve public access as open space, as well as important environmental amenities to this park poor community. Thank you.
Well, thank you. In addition to Casey Reagan's letter of support in the record, I do want to note that Gil Cedillo, Assemblymember 45th District, has also weighed in to express his support for this. I'm not going to read the letter, but trust me, it is a fantastic letter. Well, this is very boring stuff. I mean, everybody's in agreement. I thought maybe somebody from Occupy LA would show up, but it ain't happening right now. But You know what, I really have to commend Councilmember Weezer. I dealt with this issue when I was on the council the first time in the 90s, and it was not very pretty. You know the history better than I, but I'm just very, very pleased that Councilmember Weezer has taken it on, met the challenge, and with the community have come up with a plan that I think is going to benefit the city of Los Angeles. So congratulations to all of you. We're going to send this on to council with my recommendation for support, and with the inclusion of the amendment that was, City Clerk?
Yes.
Got it?
Yes.
I didn't say it yet. I was just kidding. We're going to send this forward with my recommendation for support with the inclusion of the amendment that was referred to by Councilmember Weezer, our staff member. Okay, very good. That matter is approved. Hold on. I haven't done that. Oh. So do you think you guys are going to do it? Okay, okay, folks, can I remind you that a meeting is still being conducted? Leave before I reconsider this item and... I'm going to use the privilege of the chair to take up public comment section at this time. We have one card. I understand items 1 and 2 may take a little bit of time, and since we only have one public comment card, we'll want to take that up first. And also, it's an employee of the city of Los Angeles. John Hawkins.
Thank you, Honorable Councilmember Alarcon. I'm John Hawkins, and I work for ITA. And I was here 2 weeks ago, and I talked about asking your help in helping us to form a JLM within ITA to look at the outsourcing issue that is before us. We've put in requests to facilitate that. They have gone unanswered. This morning I received a letter from a coalition of employees that they wanted someone to read. I'm not going to read that letter, but I would like to read just a portion of the closing part of that letter. And it says, ITA staff is particularly concerned as they have not seen that not only are they not being included in the conversation on outsourcing IT infrastructure change, but now a true environment of the fear of retaliation exists within the department. Employees that speak out or are outspoken about their concerns and views are having their assignments changed and their project time and even use of their vacation time tracked more closely and scrutinized. It seems not only is ITA executive management not concerned about their subordinates' viewpoints, they are squeezing second-level management in the department to stifle any such viewpoints from being heard. To this date, existing ITA staff has not been asked to take part of the solution, and the unions representing IT staff citywide have not been asked for their input. We are all concerned. So once again, I am before you asking for your help in helping us to get a JLM established so the employees will have a voice about their career.
Yeah, we're advised by City Council, we're not allowed to engage in discussion on public comment, but I am allowed to make clarifying comments. We did instruct the department to move toward the process of forming a labor management committee. So I'll just leave it at that, and you can get the information from my staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, items 1 and 2. I wanted to take these items up together because they're very similar. They're what? They're related.
Items 1 and 2 deal with nonprofit lease subsidy and real property sale policy.
I'll start first. Good afternoon, Maria Cardenas with the CAO's office. In April 2010, the CAO and the CLA issued a proposed nonprofit leasing policy report. This report was referred to various committees, and as a result, several changes were requested. The report identified about 100 nonprofit leases held by the Department of General Services and laid out a framework to formalize all the leases. The challenge to the city has been in formalizing our rental structure with the nonprofits, reducing the city's costs while at the same time affording the nonprofit tenants the opportunity to continue to provide services. Various motions were presented to amend the nonprofit policy. A Labange motion was made to exclude 14 cultural facilities and various fire station museums from the policy so that the city could explore the partnering of these facilities with nonprofit operators and with allowing the museums to continue their operations. The partnering of the cultural facilities has been presented to council several times. A final action has not taken place. As far as I understand, the latest instruction to the CAO was to report back to Arts Committee with a draft RFP for partnering 10 of the 14 remaining cultural facilities.
That's right, and Karen Kalfine with the CLA's office. I'll just add a couple of things to that. The genesis for the nonprofit lease policy actually came out of the discussion of the city's financial policies, and it was one of the requests to create a nonprofit leasing policy. So the report that the CAO and our office presented was in response to that request. So in the last couple of years at least, we've had some discussions, as Maria mentioned. This has been to the joint committees, IT, GS, and budget. It's also had been referred to Arts Parks, which was then, it was waived from that committee, which is why it's now here. But in discussion of the policy, there were a few things that the policy would provide, that there would be leases, that the nonprofit organizations would be in good standing, that they obtain liability insurance. There were some basics, and then there were some additional policy recommendations that were made. But in the discussions with the committee and the council, there were also some recommendations made to make some amendments to this policy. One of them, of course, was to remove the cultural facilities from it entirely. There was some to provide flexibility to the council to make exceptions to the policy. Some of the issues that were raised had to do with grant concerns, because some of these facilities may have either been purchased or maybe part of some sort of a grant agreement. So there were a number of things that still need to be incorporated into this if the council is going to be proceeding with the policy.
What are you guys hiding back there? Come on to the table. This item is specific, but item number 2 is a little more broad, isn't it?
Item 2, I think, is the motion that would take the cultural facilities out of the mix, essentially, and then there was a few museums too. So essentially, what that motion would do is to report.
Supersede the.
It would have a report on the nonprofit policy without those included. That's what that motion would accomplish.
Yeah, I actually don't want to break it up that way. I mean, I don't know the difference between providing art services at a discount in terms of leasing versus providing job training and internet access and all those other things that community-based services can provide. I think the real question is, what will the council agree to do when we send it to them? And when we sent it to them at market rate, there was a tremendous concern, and I was the vanguard of that concern, because I think that is not a well thought out policy. So I'd like to sort of broaden the agenda, or broaden the discussion, to really talk about where we go in terms of nonprofits in general, and just sort of give you an inkling of some of the considerations that I think we need to bear in mind. Some of the nonprofit organizations and some of the community-based organizations are directly connected to the city with regard to contracts, and some aren't. Some that aren't, in fact, provide more valuable services to the city than some who are. So it's very difficult to have a standard policy. On some of the ones that we contract with, we provide them a budget for rent, so that if we charge them for rent, we're charging ourselves for rent, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But currently, the process is, if the council member says, put this XYZ nonprofit organization in this office, you guys figure out a way to do that. Is that essentially what we do?
Essentially.
Essentially. Okay, good. Thank you. So the real answer, or the real challenge before us, is how can we devise policies that are standardized across the city, that do not create disparate treatment for those groups that are able to access our facilities. I recognize that the council member should have some significant, if not controlling, interest in who is deemed to be appropriate for their particular districts. And so I want to figure out how can we create a policy that's standard. By saying we just exempt all museums and all arts functions, I don't get it. So I actually want to, I mean, that may take care of them, but it does nothing for the others. It's not real clear. Because in order to do that, in order to exempt all the arts programs and the museums, what we would have to do is charge all the others according to the report as it is. No?
Well, Councilmember Saul Romo for the Department of Cultural Affairs. And I'm not here to change your mind.
Well, first of all, I had a question. Are you going to answer my question, or is somebody else going to answer it?
I can answer your question.
Okay, answer it.
It'll have to include a little bit of background on how you...
No, I don't want background. I want to know if we support this, either of these recommendations, would we not have to support the report as a whole in order to implement it? Which means that other nonprofits would be charged market rate.
Claudia Aguilar with the CAO's office. Actually, currently, right now, the Department of Cultural Affairs has set aside $250,000 in its budget to deal with the maintenance of these facilities already. The majority of these facilities are already under contract, so this is a little bit different situation than the nonprofits in general. We have operating agreements.
You're not answering my question.
So no, the other departments, the other nonprofits will not be paying anything extra by excluding the cultural facilities from the...
I strongly disagree with you. In order for this to take effect, we have to approve the report. If we approve the report, the nonprofits would have to be at market rate.
Well, actually, but your one policy allows for exceptions and exclusion, and we didn't ask for an exception to all arts and cultural facilities. There are probably...
I don't think you're understanding my question. Can I get somebody from the department to help me with this?
Well, let me see if I can. I think if you, what you want to have is an overall policy, and if there are going to be some flexibility or exceptions made, you want that to be included in a policy that could apply as necessary. And a policy can be crafted in a way that provides that type of flexibility. When you refer to market rent, that may be something that needs to be adjusted. Market rent may not be the appropriate terminology. It may be some sort of fair rent, but you also you may want to consider what types of services the nonprofits are providing, what they're paying for as part of a lease. There are a number of factors that would determine how the rental structure is done, and that could be structured in a way that addresses the cultural facilities that are handled in a slightly different way, as are some recreation and parks facilities as well.
Can somebody tell me what the motion is? Because you guys are talking about stuff that's not even in the motion that is before us.
Well, exactly. The question is that the motion that would exclude the 14...
No, I'm not... Excuse me. Can I chair my meeting, please? I'm asking for the motion that is before us on the agenda. Okay, it's right here. Let me read it to you. I therefore move that the CAO, CLA, General Services Department, and other relevant departments be instructed to report to Budget Finance ITGA committees on the nonprofit leasing policy for city-owned buildings with the exclusion of 14 arts facilities, et cetera, the Fire Department Historical Society, the Police Department Historic Museum, and the African Americans Firefighter Museum. So we're just getting a report from the CLA on excluding those things from the report. Are we clear on that? The original report, I'm sorry, on the nonprofit leasing policy for city-owned buildings with the exclusion of, I'm not even sure what this motion says, to tell you the truth. So can somebody tell me what this motion does?
Councilmember, item number 1 is the report back on the CAO-CLA joint report on the nonprofit policy. Item number 2 would be a report back on the nonprofit policy, but excluding the cultural facilities and the museums that are listed there. So it's an abbreviated policy. Rather than the 100 facilities that item number 1 addresses, this would eliminate about 18 facilities.
Right. The initial
Okay, so I was correct when I said that the consideration of this matter is the entire report, not just the exclusions.
Number 2 is the entire report with the excluded.
Yes, what's before
So if I approve the benefit to the 14 arts facilities, Fire Department, Historical Society, and the others, I'd essentially have to approve the other report.
If you move on that report. Yes.
Right?
Mr.
So
Chair.
now that we know what we're doing, why should I impose an additional cost on the other nonprofits without coming up with a standardized policy?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, the purpose of the motion coming
Who
from
are you?
Terry Sauer with the CAO's office.
Okay.
The second motion was introduced in Arts Parks because there are a certain number of facilities with cultural affairs where the city has contracts and the city attorney, those contracts have expired, and the city attorney has advised us that we need to proceed with with an RFP.
Hold on a second. Okay, can I get a clarification on what item number 1 is?
Item number 1 is actually the proposed nonprofit lease.
No, but where did it come from?
I'm sorry.
Where did it come from? Was it
That's-
stimulated by a motion, or?
No, this was an instruction that came out of the discussion of the financial policies for the city.
Okay, so it's all these motions
Are all
attached?
together. What happened is there were.
So this is part of the budget discussion?
Initially, it was part of the financial policy discussion.
And they deferred it.
To bring back a nonprofit lease policy. So that's where the report on the policy was initiated.
Has this gone to Budget and Finance?
Yes, and it's come to the predecessor of this committee, and it's been to council. And it was also discussed as part of I think it was the financial status report. It's been about a year.
There's been no resolution to it.
No, there hasn't. So it was all referred back here. So what you have before you is not only the policy itself, but also all the motions that went with it, including this one addressing the cultural facilities. So you have the entire package. What would probably be best is to put them together so that you have one
Well, first of all,
policy that addresses all of it.
Yeah, that goes without saying. But secondly, so the report from which we're having this discussion is the budget report.
No, it's actually a separate report on a nonprofit policy, but I was just saying that's how it was initiated. That it was initiated from the discussion from the financial policy discussion. There are a number of the financial policies.
So we instructed the CLA to come back with something?
Yes, the CLA
what we did?
to bring it back.
Okay, so,
that's correct.
Okay,
So that's just responding to a request.
Okay. But is it fair to say that the council was, let me backtrack again. I seem to recall that the proposed budget included a standardized policy to charge market rate.
No. The budget didn't include anything. There may have been some
It
discussion.
never got that far.
No, none of this has been approved yet, which is why the entire package was sent back to committee for discussion on the policy itself. So the council has not
That Richard
adopted
did. I
anything
got
with
it.
regard to this.
Okay. So I got a blank sheet of paper.
You could say
What we've had in the years since 2004-05, since the financial policies were adopted, have been, at times, 1-year moratoriums on nonprofit leases or $1-a-year leases. This fiscal year, we don't have that either.
Okay, so let me understand, Mr. Sawyer, maybe you could tell us where the policy is right now. What are we implementing right now? Is it a hodgepodge of things, or how do we do it now?
Actually, the report that's before you, let me go back, and I know you don't want to hear too much history, but...
No, I just want to know how we do the nonprofit leasing now.
How we do it now?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's all.
Basically, whatever lease arrangement that the individual nonprofits have arranged that goes all the way back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s, whatever they had back then, that's how we go by the original lease agreement. The reason the nonprofit policy was created is because we had a hodgepodge of different ways to lease.
Wait. What nonprofit policy?
There's a nonprofit policy that was created in 2001.
Okay.
And that's the policy that General Services has been trying to get approved.
Okay, so there is no policy.
There is no.
Are you
approved by the city council and mayor?
Are you abiding by that policy?
Yes.
The 2001 policy.
2001 that was really approved by the Municipal Facilities Committee, but has never been approved by mayor and council. We've been using that as a guideline for how we address nonprofits.
So describe that to me, that policy.
I think the CAOCLA had kind of gone over it, but right now it gives clear, it makes sure that each nonprofit has insurance. Each nonprofit talks about what they do as far as programmatic.
What's the community benefit?
And what's the community benefit? It gets into, there's about 15 different arrangements, different programs that we would like them to address. I wish I had it before me.
Yeah. Policy objectives?
Yeah, different policy objectives.
So this is the policy that Mr. Parks was trying to get to address, to try and...
So we have continuity for all 100, that they all would follow the same procedures and policies.
Okay. You want to...
No, I was just going to add, today, if we were going to negotiate a lease with a nonprofit, we would certainly verify, first and foremost, their 501c3 status, okay? The next thing we want to know is, as you mentioned, the types of services to be provided, as well as the, sort of the audience that will receive that service, so to speak. We would also make sure that they had $1 million worth of insurance, liability insurance. We will also be requiring that they indemnify the city from any future liability. We would also expect them to be responsible for all of the building repairs and the building maintenance, the custodial maintenance, and all of that, and we would also require them to be responsible for paying their utilities.
Okay.
All of that
So
in exchange
so
for
with all of those things
salary.
being in place, and I assume there's a few others, we give them free rent?
Well, it's $1 a year, which I think in today's economy is tantamount to being free.
I would say so. Somebody tell people to turn off their phones. Sorry about that. I don't know how to shut it off. There. Okay, so So when we get these several motions, you know, the Labange and the several others that want to exempt certain things, what are we exempting them from? Aren't they already exempted? I mean...
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the...
So if we exempted them from the policy, they wouldn't have to have general liability, or?
Mr. Chair, with respect to the cultural affairs facilities specifically, the city has, cultural affairs has direct contracts, service contracts with the providers to provide arts programming on behalf of the city, and they're in a number of council districts. So they have the direct...
But most of the nonprofits that we rent to for $1, they have similar agreements.
Well, this is separate and apart.
Is that not true? Is that not true?
These are service contracts with the Department of Cultural Affairs. They
So
receive
the others are with CDD. What's the difference?
they receive a stipend from Cultural Affairs.
The others receive stipends from CDD. What's the difference?
The issue at hand is with the facilities, with the Cultural Affairs facilities, one, we were directed to go out to RFP, to reissue the RFP for these facilities at the direction of the city attorney, because a number of the providers have been there for some time, and because the RFP for service has not been issued in some time, we can't extend the contracts any further. Secondly, the budget directed...
I have no idea how that connects to this item.
Well, they're in city facilities, but these are not leases, these are service agreements, and that's why these Cultural Affairs facilities, Cultural Affairs is not leasing the facilities out. They are providing direct service. They get money from Cultural Affairs to provide direct service, and it's not the same vehicle, lease vehicle that you have with a number of the CDD organizations.
Councilman, what the CAO's office is saying is that in a number of cases, we have a situation where we have a nonprofit who is funded by Cultural Affairs, and that nonprofit has a programmatic agreement with Cultural Affairs, which is separate and apart from the lease agreement for the facility.
Well, let me be a little bit more clear. What we're really talking about is there's 6 exemptions that are on this list that at one point weren't on the list. And that's because when we're going to RFP, as we're developing the RFP, our legal counsel advised some of the elements that you want to contract for are really taking shape of the lease agreement, of the city's lease policy. So when we looked at what we wanted to do as a department with what the proposed lease policy by the CAO and the CLA, they weren't compatible. And so that's when the Councilmember Labange felt we should have an exclusion for these facilities from the greater nonprofit lease policy, and largely because I, as a department right now, can tell a nonprofit programmatically and what to do, and I can also set performance metrics and performance standards, whether they're doing something right or doing something wrong.
Okay, this is not a difficult problem. Do the agreements under Cultural Affairs, do they include all of the provisions in the lease agreements?
Well, most of them, yes. We require liability insurance. We don't charge market rate.
Okay. Well, you mentioned 15 requirements or something like that. I think you said 15.
Oh, that was my...
Yeah, he said, the original Joint Sawyer said 15. So
I said 15. I think I may have shared about 7 or 8. But he's the Director of Asset Management, so I'm sure he's more familiar with it.
Well, I don't want to cause any internal strife here.
No, don't worry. Don't worry.
I just want a number I can work with. What I'm trying to get at is if their program service agreements include all the provisions that you have, there should be no need for council action.
Well, we don't want them to include all the provisions. For instance...
You what?
We don't want them to include all those.
Okay, well...
That's why we're asking for the exemption.
That's what I want to know about. What's the controversy?
So, and I could cite to at least 2 specific areas. One of them would be the requirement to charge fair market rates.
There is no requirement to charge fair market?
Market. I think it would be market rate.
Under the new policy.
Or market rate, but there is no policy to charge for market rate.
Not yet, no.
But will there be if a new policy is adopted? And if so, we don't...
You don't contract on the basis of what will be.
But
or what might be, or what could,
We
should
don't want
be.
to charge,
No, the existing policy does not charge market rate, so that solves your problem. What's the
we
next
don't want
one?
to charge for utilities at 100%, for the utilities and for, maintenance costs. The other elements such as liability insurance, we already require all of our nonprofits.
So who pays for those?
At the moment, the city's paying for them.
Yeah, but who?
GSD or Recreation and Parks.
Do you give them money for their budget?
Actually, yes.
We do now.
They do. There is money
Starting this
set
fiscal year.
aside in cultural affairs budget specifically to pay for utilities and for any repairs at the facilities that are referenced.
So they are paying for them.
Well,
The
the
department
department is, not the nonprofit.
They are paying for them. They're being paid for.
That is true. They are being paid for by the
So
city.
I don't think you need anything for that. The General Services Department is essentially saying the utilities should be paid for. The Department of Cultural Affairs is paying for it. These nonprofits are acting as agents of the Cultural Affairs Department. They're paying for it. End of question. What's the next one?
I think those are our two big issues.
Is this just paperwork for city attorneys, or what the heck are we doing here? This is ridiculous. There should be a workout here. Just figure it out. I mean, we shouldn't need to go to council every time somebody gets queasy about somebody creating a new policy. The fact is, we're not moving forward with any recommended policy changes. There was a discussion in council about market rate, and all of a sudden the sky is falling. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. If the utilities are being paid for, if they have general liability, if they have all the other standards that are required by general services, then what's the problem?
These were concerns that were expressed in the Arts, Parks, Health, and Aging Committee, and the motion, when the nonprofit leasing policy was waived out of these committees, these represent the concerns of the committee chair.
So is Cultural Affairs not going to contract with these entities?
We want to contract with these entities. as soon
Are
as
they
possible.
not going to do it if we don't do this?
No, we're working,
We're
we're
working with it.
we're working
No,
on
I'm
our-
asking a
No,
specific
we will
question.
contract with these agencies.
Okay, is General Services not going to provide the buildings if they adhere to everything that you would regularly ask for? Is there any problem on your end of this?
We currently are providing 110 buildings to about 110 nonprofits, and we don't even have a current lease agreement with them. So I think to answer your question, we would probably still make those facilities available to the nonprofits.
No, I'm talking specifically about Cultural Affairs. I'm talking specifically about this issue.
Oh, I think that
Are you okay with what they're doing?
as long as they continue to provide us with the funding for utilities, building maintenance, and building repair, we'll continue to provide those.
And you don't care whether it's the agency or the Cultural Affairs Department?
As long as the funding comes from some other entity other than GSD.
This is a waste of time. What the heck are we doing here? What is the problem we are trying to fix here? I don't get it. You're contracting with these agencies. They haven't stopped operating.
Correct,
You will renew the contracts
Correct.
if necessary.
correct.
And General Services agrees with, as long as their provisions are being met. Is there something I'm missing here?
With regard to the cultural facilities, there's a way to move forward with that. I think that's already, the instructions have already been given to go to an RFP and to partner with these agencies. When this came up for discussion, they were concerned that there would be difficult for them to find partners and to have these leases if a nonprofit lease policy was adopted that would change that kind of an arrangement. So I think with regard to the cultural facilities, that's something that can be worked out, and that's on a separate track.
You're implying there's something else we got to deal
Well,
with.
what you also have is the overarching.
Oh, yeah.
policy.
We're not
So
even
separate
touching
from
that.
that, but
We're not
that's the
touching
bigger issue.
Yeah.
Councilmember.
Well, in that regard, I don't want to piecemeal this item. That's one of the problems. We got, I don't know how many motions here in counting items 2 and several within item 1. And we haven't done a report that collapses this whole thing together and thinks of other considerations, what we might do as a city, what you recommend as a department, your historical frame of reference, all of those things. There seems to be a sort of take a blind eye approach to this. At least the council members are sort of, well, yeah, as long as it's not me directly involved, I don't want to know about it. Then again, we are instructing the General Services Department to make arrangements with this organization in this facility, and et cetera, and we have these long-standing agreements where it's very difficult to move a pre-existing entity out, because really it's hard to hang your hat on something when we don't have a standardized policy.
That's right.
So it's kind of hard to evict, if you will, when we don't have a standard set of policies, and the council member is not willing to pull the trigger. That's a horrible situation. I get it. So the question is, if we really want to establish a standardized policy, or if well enough is should be left alone. I mean, I don't have I thought I had a position coming into here, but right now I'm thinking, so what are we trying to fix?
Well, I think the purpose of having a policy, one is to have, again,
Well, the department has a policy.
yeah, but I'm talking more generally, and not just.
No. Let's be very clear. The department has a policy. They made an executive decision in concert with the Municipal Facilities Committee to implement a policy, and they've been implementing that policy for 10 years.
Right. We have a separate instruction to report on, to include this as part of the financial policies. If
A separate instruction from where?
that came from the council,
That's this one.
that's number one, yes.
Okay, and if I say it's not there, it's not there.
Well, if the council doesn't want to move ahead with it, then
Well, I mean, I don't know whether they just want to send us on a primrose path to oblivion and just let the existing policy prevail. It seems, I mean, I'm trying to get at what exactly we're trying to
The
fix here.
2001 policy was adopted by the Municipal Facilities Committee. It got referred to council. It went to various committees. It has not moved out of.
Nevertheless, they're implementing it.
Right, they're
I say when something's been implemented for 10 years, there's a policy.
Right. In terms of
Just the way I think.
in terms of the leases that the Department of General Services have, when we looked at them, we found that we don't have written existing leases for many of them. Some of the organizations are not paying utilities, some of them are not paying their building maintenance. And the framework of the CAO CLA report was to provide some general provisions immediately that
Wait a minute. Let's talk about those issues.
Okay.
Let's say an agency is not maintaining the building. Under the policy that was directed in 2001, or devised in 2001, with the executive decision of GSD and the Municipal Facilities Committee's recommendation, they have policies that require the tenant to maintain the building. So what problem am I trying to fix? They already have the authority to require them to maintain the building.
I think I know what we're trying to get to is leases with each of the nonprofits that are across the board. We don't, right now, all of them are on month to month. And that's really what this whole driving force.
Now there's a problem we should fix.
That's the problem we're trying to fix.
That's one problem we're trying to fix. Okay, I got it.
You fix that problem, I think we take care of.
But in order to do that,
to approve the policy.
We need the council.
The council, exactly.
To set the standards.
Exactly.
From which you can write the leases.
And we gave a guideline back in 2001. The CLA CAO wrote a report that further made some other
We got
recommendations.
100 agencies out there on month-to-month leases.
That's right.
Scratching their heads about what the city is doing, right?
Correct.
How can they operate like this? Why do you have to have month-to-month leases? Why under the 2001 policy couldn't you have annual leases?
We need approval from city council to move ahead with
any
leases.
Any lease?
Any lease. The
But you
General
have the
Services does
authority.
not have
but
the authority to enter
You have the
into any.
authority to extend a lease by 1 month?
Once the lease is expired, they automatically go into month to month.
So the authority comes from where? I'm trying to understand this here, and I apologize.
Even when the lease expires and we go to month,
No, but where does the authority come from to go to month?
I believe it's based upon an opinion we received from the city attorney, and we do that with many of our tenants, even some of our retail tenants.
So essentially, the city attorney is saying that the council doesn't have to renew the lease if it's just a month extension?
No, what happens is that, what has really happened is that the idea of advancing new leases for nonprofits has really been placed on hold until we could sort out what our new policy was going to be.
Okay.
So probably for, anywhere from 6 to 7 to 8 years, we've had a number of nonprofits operating on month to month, consistent with their previous lease, because we've been trying to advance a new policy for leasing city-owned property to the nonprofits.
Okay, but I'm trying to get at how you can extend the contract by a month for 6 years with no council action.
Well, we could revisit that with the city attorney, but in our discussions with them, they have allowed us to move forward on a month-to-month basis until we
Is the city attorney present?
Lease.
No, I don't think so.
We don't have any city attorney present on this? I mean,
then also,
I find that hard to understand. I mean, I don't understand where the authority to extend the contract comes from. Is it in the contract?
Well, let me just say
I don't
that
have it, but it may also be within the lease itself, but that's...
I believe that if you look at the lease, we do have the authority embedded in the lease as one of the terms and conditions to extend it on a month-to-month basis once it expires.
So whereas the original lease agreement may have provided the department the authority to extend on a month-to-month basis, there's no termination period for that?
No. Well, let me say this. I don't think anyone anticipated that we would be on a month-to-month agreement with some of these nonprofits for as long as we've been on those agreements.
No, I understand that.
Okay, I don't think anyone
I don't think
anticipated
anybody wants that.
And to answer your question, there is no termination clause. In other words, it doesn't say that you can go month to month for a total of 24 months, and then after that you have to terminate the agreement. It doesn't say that at all. No.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't believe we ever...
Is there anything that says you can't extend them for a year?
There is no language like that in the lease agreements.
But so the language in the lease agreement specifically says 1 month?
No, it says you can extend the lease on a month-to-month basis
It does
until
say
the
that.
new lease is consummated.
Okay. So the city attorney essentially is saying if you want to contract on an annual basis, you got to get the city council's approval.
Yes, if we were going to renew these leases,
So
we
why couldn't you do that? Why couldn't you just go with the existing contractor and say they've been here for 6 years, they've been here for 12 years, they've been doing this for 20 years, some of them, right? 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them in place for 20 years, and you say, well, I want to extend this lease for 5 years.
The city council can do that. But the
Why don't
city
we,
council-
why don't we do that? Why
Why didn't the city council do that?
why don't you recommend that for the agencies you think are good players?
Our recommendation was the nonprofit policy to have consistency, and that's what we move forward, that we have a policy across the board, and after that policy is approved, then we individually negotiate with each of the nonprofits to move forward with leases.
I guess let's think this through, okay? Because I can see where that solves your problems, but I don't think it solves the council problem. The council problems are political. We're trying to deal with a plethora of agencies out there that have a variety of interests, and the council members, the term-limited council members, which all of us will be term-limited at some point in a short term, have to deal with the reality of changes in our community. So you're asking us, if we give you the authority to create lease agreements for a year, then just by virtue of that reality, we are extending you an opportunity to kick some folks out that have been operating in our districts for years.
No. That's not true, Councilman.
No?
No.
So you'd keep them on for month to month?
Well, what we were in the process of doing was moving forward with the development of a new nonprofit policy so that we could then go to the existing tenants that are nonprofits that are occupying those city buildings and start negotiating new leases with them.
And if they don't agree to those leases, what happens?
Well,
no, seriously, let's play it out.
Just be very candid. If
some of them would go.
Nonprofit, let's say, council member in your
Some of
district,
them would say, that's not the agreement I struck with my council member.
and I was just going to tell you, we would certainly sit down with the council member and have a discussion about the terms and conditions that that council member would like to advance for this nonprofit. And if that is exactly what the council member wants to do, based upon this new policy, which recommends an exception, you could go ahead and advance a motion to the full city council with the terms and conditions in that motion that you would like us to negotiate with that nonprofit.
Okay, so an alternative would be for every council member to introduce motions to extend their leases
if in fact
right now, without having a standardized policy. Just say, I got 6 organizations, I want this one on an annual contract, this one on a 3-year contract, this one, and I want the following requirements, and you could do that.
That has happened. Okay.
Well, I don't know about the other 14 council members, but I would sure like to create stability in my district with the agencies that are serving my district, and actually do that negotiation. I mean, I understand the benefits of a standardized policy, and I understand the benefits of community service, because I come out of the ranks of community-based organizations. And I was an administrator and monitor for community-based organizations, so I understand the city's position very well. But the primary goal should be on expanding the pool of services that are available to the people of Los Angeles. It seems to me that we are distracting agencies from investment, from contributions that may come when we have them on a month-to-month lease. And it takes away from the natural flow of charity in our community-based organizations that are using these facilities. So it seems to me we got to come up with a way to get to annual leases without trying to create a peanut butter approach that is going to work for some council members, not going to work for others. And so I don't know how that's different than just working with each council member to do that. To, in my district, just come to me with all the agencies that are currently under lease, and then I'll sit down and work with you on what those agreements should be in terms of, you already have some generic policies that you use.
We're actually still using the 2001 policy that was adopted by the MFC.
Right, so that's fine, but in terms of going from a month-to-month to annual leases or biannual or whatever, however you want to do it, just use we can keep your policies. I'm not suggesting that I exempt an agency from insurance or anything like that, but just in terms of the time of service, I think it would be beneficial if we could just strike those agreements. Yeah. I don't see anything that's hindering that, except that the council, every time we bring the subject up, it's like herding cats. I mean, everybody's in a different place, and the department knows better than anybody that is the case. And so, rather than herd cats, just take care of one at a time.
Well,
Councilman, if I could just say that I think part of the intent of having a policy was to do much of what you've just said, is to have certain standard things that would apply, and I don't think would necessarily be controversial. I think everybody, it's appropriate to have a lease. It's appropriate to have certain basic requirements, such as the nonprofits should be in good standing, that they should carry insurance. But I think in the discussion with the council and previously in this committee and in budget committee, the council members recognize that there needs to be some flexibility in this kind of a policy so that you can get the kinds of services that you want in your community, that there are facilities that are being made available for that. But you can't necessarily have a cookie cutter approach because, first of all, every facility is going to be different, and the services that are going to be provided are going to be a little bit different. So there has to be some ability to look at them on a case-by-case basis. And I think the policy that was presented to you before doesn't articulate that. And that's one of the things that if you gave us some instructions for us to revisit this, that's what we would address. That would be part of what we would address so we could get those concerns that have been raised and are raised today, too.
Okay, now what about the issue of market rate?
I think the market rate issue, market rate probably isn't appropriate. If some fair rental rate based on, the condition of the facility, the types of services that are going to be provided, what they're going to be required to pay for, a fair rent could be $1 a year. It could be something more than that. It could be that's why each of these needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and that would involve general services to assist with that in conjunction with the council.
How much are we talking about here? Right now it's $1 a year, but I mean, market rate on our facility. What are the various costs for our facilities?
Well,
what is the various market rates for the various facilities?
The market rate is the elephant in the middle of the room. That's the issue that has made it really impossible.
Is that a reference to Elephant Hill, or?
No, we just took care of it.
You just had elephants on your mind. Yeah. I get it. Okay.
What I'm really saying is that that's the reason why the policy has not been able to move forward.
Because some council members want market rate,
and some others don't.
Want zero.
Want $1 a year.
Well, I don't think it's a question of $1 a year. I don't think anybody agrees they should pay $1 a year. What they want is services for their community. The services are essential to the city's performance of what we do, and it enhances our work. So why should they have to pay rent when we don't? It's an interesting discussion, but so that is hindering your ability to get the general policy on all the other issues.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just implementing one anyway. But the unfortunate thing is everybody's on month to month.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the problem.
And what we would do in developing that market rate is to probably hire a consultant to, go ahead and do the analysis that is necessary to determine what the square footage cost would be. But also what GSD would...
Well, you could just go on the computer and figure that out. It's like... You don't have to be a real estate agent to know that. All you have to do is, you want the market rate for a certain area, just go on what is the website that gives you that? You can figure that out easily. You don't have to hire a consultant. Use the money for free rent.
Well, the other thing we would do, too, is do a facility assessment. Because if we're going to go to market rate, we have to ensure that these facilities are in compliance.
I'm not going to a market rate.
Okay.
That ain't happening.
Okay.
So don't worry about it. No problem.
I'm not sure what fair rental is within the nomenclature of commercial real estate, but we'll work with the CAO.
No, I think what you're really saying is you're not sure what fair rent is in the context of city council members' decision-making ability.
Okay.
It's because we're all different, and we're all going to come up with something different for our communities, and our communities have different needs. So, I mean, those are real, those are fair questions, but let's try to deal with them. I have no problem with tackling the bull by the horns. So our goal is to get people off month-to-month leases. That'll be good for the department. Administratively, that'll be good for the community-based agencies. So that's what we really want to solve.
Right. And compliance.
The issue of the other policies. So we could approve the policies without dealing with the issue of market rate whatsoever, right?
Yes, you certainly could.
But we would still have to deal with the issue of annual lease agreements versus month to month. So what is hindering the department from recommending annual leases?
Well, first of all, the CAO and CLA have been working to put together a new policy to present to committee and council. And because they have been working on this policy, all of the nonprofit leases going forward have been put on hold Okay.
No, I get
If-
that.
with-
I understand. I don't
with
care what the
direction-
CAO is doing. I'm asking, what is stopping the department from recommending annual leases?
The idea that we're looking at developing a new policy.
Forget about the policy. Why don't you want to recommend annual leases?
If you give me that direction, we'll certainly do that.
I'm thinking, why couldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I do that? Is there any reason why I wouldn't do that?
Then I'll just, and maybe the suggestion, and I think CLA talked about it earlier, that we take all of these ideas and concepts and come back to you within a short period of time with answering all of your questions, because another, and I'll just add another one, is the conditions of the buildings themselves. Some of them aren't in very good conditions. Matter of fact, they could be considered hazardous.
Yeah,
and
but-
even though they're
but-
doing great things in the world,
Let me ask you, your policy, which was
would address that.
created in 2001, but if the contract was before 2001,
We're still liable. If someone dies or gets hurt in those buildings, there's a fire because they don't have proper fire life safety, the city of Los Angeles is liable.
no, I understand that. What I'm saying is
Not
that...
all of our leases comply with the
With the
2001
policy.
policy. There are a number of...
Because they were before
They're
2001.
now, right.
But they were before, the original lease was before
Some of them were, some of them
2001.
might just be a matter of checking.
Well, there's the answer to
some
your
nonprofits-
question. There's the answer to your question. How can I get council to move on annual leases? And the answer is because our liability is increasing each day, that we do not create annual leases because some of the agencies are not maintaining the building because their previous contract did not require them to.
And you might add to that some of them who are required are not doing that as well.
But they would be in violation of your policy, and you should be able to act on them.
The city has to go in and do imminent repairs if it's determined to be hazardous. And I think that's some of the discussions that we've had during the last few years with the city attorney present. From what I recall, they have cautioned against executing new leases unless the city is going to guarantee a certain level of standard on the condition
Meaning
of
the city
building.
takes care of the buildings.
Or the
We're going to
nonprofit.
enter into a lease with you for this building, and you're not going to be responsible, you're going to be responsible for building maintenance after we bring it up to a certain level of standard. Some of our facilities may have a lot more deferred maintenance than others.
And actually, another reason for having a lease is to ensure that if we enter a lease agreement where, let's say, the tenant agrees to maintain the building, you know, we're talking about maybe paint and landscaping and that sort of thing, that they meet that obligation so that we don't get a facility back that hasn't been maintained according to a lease. I mean, there are a number of factors here.
Okay. This has helped help me understand this situation with a little more clarity. But I want to focus on one, the goal of the problem we're trying to solve is getting community-based organizations who rent city facilities off the month-to-month lease. The focus should not be on whether it's market rate or not. The focus should be on just getting them off the month lease. In addition to that, we want to standardize policies that we would require on any organization, regardless of whether they had a pre-existing agreement or not. And thirdly, we want to have some flexibility factors that perhaps the council members can consider as they determine which agencies they believe are going to best serve their communities. I call them flexibility factors because the needs are different. This is a big city. We have different issues. And we have different agencies that have the ability to provide services. So in some communities, we're not going to get the service they need, but they can provide some other service. But so if you could break a report out in those ways, and then continue to try and get us to the goal of annual leases for community-based organizations. On the issue of market rate, I'm trying to think. Let's talk about that now, just for a few minutes, because I got to go, and I know you do too. But on the issue of market rate, first of all, I don't think we'll ever get votes on the council, majority votes, to support a standardized market rate rental agreement with anybody that uses the facilities from the nonprofit sector, because we're essentially trading them. We're trading them rent for service. We want their services in our communities. But what kinds of considerations might we have with regard to what some organizations should pay? Tom LaBonge is saying the arts organization shouldn't pay anything, but in fact they are paying something. So whatever he's saying in the motion is not really the fact, because they're still paying rent. They're just paying it in a different way, and it still gets paid. But if we were to consider the various kinds of considerations on rent, how do we do this? If we did move toward any kind of substantive requirement to pay rent, I want to let it be known that what I would do is begin low and ratchet it up over an annual basis. So like the first year, 10% of market rate, second year, 20, 30, 40, maybe up to 50%, so that people can get comfortable with having to pay rent, but not have to have a dramatic shift in their budgets. And then the 50%, the other 50%, should be factored into the services they provide. Anyway, that's just a thought of a way to approach this. I'm not saying I agree with it, because some agencies can't afford 10%, but they're providing valuable services to our community. Anyway, those are the kinds of things that I would like to include in the report. How do I put items 1 and 2 together? Can I make it into one?
You can have us report back on both of those, and when we bring this back, we can put in a recommendation to come.
I want one report. I don't want two reports.
No, we would report on.
Okay, so together. We want one report on items 1 and 2, but in the greater context of how to handle community-based nonprofit organizations leasing for city properties.
Yeah. And I think when we had public testimony on this, some of those issues were also raised by some of the nonprofits, in addition to their desire to have multi-year leases, so that one of the examples was when they go out and try to fundraise so that they can continue their operations, having multi-year leases is more helpful. Some of these I think what we would do is take all the comments that we've had and the input that we've had and try to put it together and come up with something that makes some sense.
Well, let's also talk about another issue, and it's an important issue, I think, because what has happened is the department is sort of gun-shy on new leases, and we have a relatively high vacancy rate. We have some opportunities to provide leases, but we don't necessarily want to move forward aggressively because we don't know what the policies are going to be. So one of the goals of establishing these policies is to be more aggressive in getting people into those existing facilities that are vacant, that could be used by somebody, so that we can help our general fund. And so this is in the department's interest to be able to fully utilize our vacancies for community services, if we generate a policy that also adds a revenue factor into it. Maybe all new organizations have to pay X amount. The old ones they sort of get grandfathered in under a different policy. I mean, there are different ways to do this, but I think the main thing is let's get a policy in place so you guys can actually create more leases out. Instead of dealing with 12 different leases for one organization in 1 year, let's get 12 different organizations and get these buildings full with bustling with the services that our community needs. I mean, that's really what the goal is. So So that's what I want to accomplish. So, okay, so we'll continue this item, items 1 and 2, and ask the CLA and CAO and General Services to come back with some suggestions on how we might proceed based on the discussion that we've had today. And I want to thank you very much. It has been very enlightening, although I have to tell you, it's complicated. The traditional real estate considerations go out the window when you throw in 15 council members. I mean, there's just no way you can. There's no reason we should shy away from the reality that we have 15 political decision makers who voted in by the public to make decisions that are not necessarily in accord with traditional real estate values. And so, because we have to consider many other things, and I think that's fair. That's part of the game. And if we make the wrong decisions, we get elected out. It's that simple. That's our burden, not yours. Your burden is just getting us to agree on a policy. Okay, so hopefully we can get that done. I think we can. It's not as difficult as it may appear. Then I could be completely wrong.
I think that there are a number of recommendations in our report that were not opposed by anybody that we still
Absolutely.
strongly advocate, and we will start there.
Well, we'll just start with the insurance example.
Yes.
Who's going to disagree with that? I mean, okay. So let's move forward from the positive, and maybe we send those forward. I don't know. We'll incrementally and eventually end up with the whole pie.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're done with our business. We took the public comment, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.